Attention bowlers, we are going to get started. From Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire, this is the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour. My name is Steve Kelly, and I will be your host and guide during this Class B playoff match between today's challengers. Away bowler Steve Kelly challenging Eric Hallee Sr. at Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire. That's Steve Kelly leading off with a left side washout to the left of the head pin, but pins are still falling slowly. That's a 7 drop. That's the 1 pin, the 3 pin, and the 10 pin on the deck. And he's firing for a spare shot. He misses to the right of the head pin, and he's left with just the 1 and the 10 pins on the deck. Shooting for the 10 box. Going for the 10 box, he'll connect with the 1, and the 1 will go back to the 10. That's a 10 box for Steve Kelly to start off. Folks, this is an overdub. Obviously, you see Steve Kelly bowling, and my name is Steve Kelly talking. So, yes, at the time, I obviously couldn't commentate my own match, so this is just filling in for later. If you're watching this, obviously not live, this is going to be on Candlepin Bowling Network as an edited re-recording with an overdub. Steve Kelly drops 7. That's the 5-7-10, the Matsushi special with wood. There's 2 pieces of wood in front of the 5, and then there's 1 in front of the 7, and the 10 pin is orange. Steve Kelly fires right on the center wood. The 5 and the 10 go, but the 7 does not. Steve Kelly shooting for a 10 box once again. After the missed spare opportunity, fires down the left and will take another 10 box. That is 20 after 2 for Kelly. Good as always to have you along with us. Originally live streamed on Friday, May 24th, and available for watching anytime upon the conclusion of the match. There should be subtitles and live captioning available for those who appreciate that, so feel free to activate those if you need. Steve Kelly drops 7 with an awkward split. That appears to be the 2, the 6, and the 10 pins with a piece of wood along the 2 pin. Sweeping it over to the 6 and the 10 should equate to a spare, but Steve Kelly will play the wood on the left side, and it sweeps over to the right, and he's left with just the goalposts. For an 8, 9, or 10 box, Kelly fires on the left side once again, sails through, arms up. Can't give him 3 points, but how about 8? That'll be an 8 box for Steve Kelly. That puts him at 28 after 3. This is a playoff match of the ACST, the quarterfinal. Steve Kelly in particular finished the season with 172 wins and 80 losses with a 2.15 win-loss ratio. Steve Kelly on the pocket, the 1-3 pocket, dropping all but the 5 and the 10. Again, what is it with the 5 pins tonight? The 10 pin is orange again. It's like deja vu. There's no wood with the 5 and the 10. This shot is often called the right side setback. Steve Kelly will make the right side setback, though, for a spare. It's always an impressive shot, much more difficult than it looks. The object pin is always going to be the 5 pin when firing at this, so he's at 38 after 4 at this point in the game, with a fill on the spare pending, and then 1 more box pending before Steve Kelly sits. Then we'll say hello to Eric Hallee Sr. Steve Kelly filling the spare, misses the head pin to the left. It looks like a 4 fill. Lakeside Lanes tends to be a bit of a harder house as of late. Steve Kelly fires and takes a few more outies on the 1-3 pocket, but he's left with the 5 and the 8 pin. Common denominator seems to be the 5 pin as of late. Kelly releases on the 5 and 8 and will clean up for a 10 box to sit on a 52 half to start out the match. And we will say hello to Eric Hallee Sr. for the first time tonight. Eric Hallee Sr. and Steve Kelly talking before the match, discussing that this house is difficult, and we were joking that we might end up playing what is the equivalent of a golf game here with the way some of the pins have not been falling at Lakeside as of recently. But we'll say hello to Eric Hallee Sr. now. And here's a quick recap of the half. Steve Kelly with a 52 half. Eric Hallee Sr. firing on the head pin. He's on the 1-3 pocket, dropping 7. Looks like the 2, the 4, and the 6 on the deck. And Eric Hallee Sr. has a difficult spare opportunity. It is possible, however difficult. Not a lot of wood to help him out. Drills right through the 2 pin, leaving the 4 and the 6. It'll be a salvage mission for a 10 box for Eric Hallee Sr. Concluding his opening box of the first game. He shoots for the right side, takes out one stick, picks one stick at 2, will take a 9 box. That puts Eric Hallee Sr. at 9 after 1 to start out. We are at Lakeside Lanes tonight, located right off of exit 1 on 101 in Manchester, New Hampshire. I like to think of it as if you're going to UNH from 293, but decide to go bowling instead and veer off the first exit you see on 101. Eric Hallee Sr. dropping 5, the 4 horseman right side, and the 7 pin. 1, 3, 6, 7, 10 is what Eric Hallee Sr. is shooting at right now. Eric Hallee Sr. for the spare shot fires. He just narrowly kisses down the head pin, leaving the 3, 6, 7, 10 for a 10 box. Lakeside Lanes is the first right off of the Massabesic traffic circle after taking exit 1 on 101 and adjacent to Massabesic Lake. Eric Hallee Sr. will take out the right side and leave the left side for a 9 box. That's 2 9s in a row, 18 after 2 for Eric Hallee Sr. Lakeside Lanes is a humble 24-lane house comprised of all wood approaches and all wood lanes. Lakeside Lanes opened on November 20th, 1959 and is nearly the same age as Lido Lanes in Nashua, New Hampshire at roughly 64 years as of January 2024 at least. That's a right side half Worcester from Eric Hallee Sr. The thing about the half Worcester is there's some history there. The term was coined on the Channel 5 Candlepin bowling show with Don Gillis. It was during a TV tournament when one guy was doing particularly not so good, and he kept punching out the 2 and the 8, or the 2 and the 8, or the 3 and the 9, and he would just keep punching and punching and punching, and it would result in the commentator stating he's already halfway back to Worcester because the bowler was from Worcester originally. So a little history lesson for you there. That's 28 after 3 for Eric Hallee Sr. here in the game 1 of 5 with 2 to go before he sits. Eric Hallee Sr. and Steve Kelly bowled once before. Eric Hallee Sr.'s home record is 76 and 50. That's a 1.52 win-loss ratio. His season average is 106.3. When he's home at Lakeside, his average is 109.3. That's 6 more than his away average of 103.3. 7 drop for Eric Hallee Sr. The 2, the 4, and the 7. He takes the 2 and the 7 somehow, leaving the 4. Eric Hallee Sr.'s high single was 143. He bowled that twice, once versus Dave LaRoche in round 1, and then again versus Steve Kelly in round 7. More on that match later. Eric Hallee Sr. will miss for a 9 box for 37 after 4. Eric Hallee Sr.'s high series is 615. He bowled that versus Steve Kelly in round 7. He has 42 strikes, 170 spares, and 199 tens that he racked up during the regular season. His perfect box percentage is 48%. He has 9,568 seasonal total pins. Overall, he leads Class B North Division 4. By the end of the season, he was ahead of Casey McCool, David LaRoche, and Faye Sawyer. Overall, Eric Hallee Sr. is 4th in B North. That's Eric Hallee Sr. dropping 9. All but the 10 pin on the deck. Piece of wood meandering around the center, still rolling and settling. And he shoots, and he gets it. Or excuse me, he doesn't get it. He fouls it off for a 9 box. For 46 after 5 that Eric Hallee Sr. will conclude on. Meanwhile, Steve Kelly with a 52 half in the first game here. Steve Kelly will take lane 8 for the first time tonight at Lakeside Lanes. We're on lanes 7 and 8 at Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire. That's Steve Kelly, who finished the regular season with 172 wins and 80 losses. That's a 2.15 win-loss ratio. When he's away, he's 91 and 35 after 9 matches, 2.6 win-loss. When he's at home, it's 81 and 45. That's a 1.8 win-loss ratio. Steve Kelly drops 8, leaving the 1 and the 2 on the deck. No fill on any spare to speak of, but he's shooting for a spare and will take one of the 2, leaving just the head pin on the deck. For the 10 box, he'll get a 9 box. That's 61 after 6 for Steve Kelly. Clearing some wood, pausing for some lane maintenance. Steve Kelly's season average is 112.45. That's 4th in B class. He has a home average of 112.1 and an away average of 112.8. That's a .7 difference between the two. Very consistent. He bowled a high single of 148 versus Joe Moose de Almeida in round 9, and a high series of 615 versus Casey McCool in round 4. He has 43 strikes, 232 spares, and 207 tens. It's a 6 drop for Steve Kelly. 1, 2, 7, and 9 pins are on the deck. He releases on the 1-2 pocket, but a little bit too full, but it still is enough to take a spare. Taking everything out. That's a spare for Steve Kelly in the 7th, much needed. 71 plus a ball after 7 at this point in the match. Be filling a spare on this next frame here on Lane 8 in Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire. Good as always to have you along. If you're watching on Candlepin Bowling Network on YouTube, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, ring that bell whenever you have a chance. And that would be awesome just to help get our name out there in terms of Candlepin Bowling, in terms of the sport, and make the ACST better in every possible way. We're here in the postseason, and we are taking signups for next year's Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour. We'll be introducing a new E-class in the future, starting this fall, because we have so many bowlers that are signing up. Steve Kelly and JJ Tarigny in particular are moving to the A class next year from the B class due to the average spread. That's a 7 fill for Steve Kelly on that spare. So he gets 71 plus 7. That puts him at 78 after 7. Going for a second spare, and he'll get a second spare right there. A second spare right there. 88 in 8 plus a ball for Steve Kelly. Filling a spare, Steve Kelly's perfect box percentage is 54 for the season with 10,118 seasonal total pins, one of few bowlers in the B class to achieve that statistic. Steve Kelly finished the season in second place in B North Division 3 ahead of Paul Mativier, Dominic Palladino, and behind JJ Tarigny. That's a 7 fill on Steve Kelly's spare, by the way. Should be 95 in 8 after all said and done. No third spare in a row. He misses the head pin. Shooting for a 9 or a 10 box now. Steve Kelly on the head pin. He'll take it for another 10. The 4th 10 of the game. He's at 105 in 9. Steve Kelly overall finished 5th place in B North. Puts him at the top of the wild card bracket, facing Eric Hallee Sr. in the first playoff round quarterfinals. Steve Kelly first ball the final frame of the first game here. He will punch full plus a few extra pins. It's a spread eagle plus some additional pins. Looks like it's the 3, 4, 6, 7, 9, and 10. Some wood across the 4 and the 7. Kelly fires. He chooses the right side. He punches full on the right side to complete the banana split. The 4, 6, 7, 10 are all that are left on the deck. At this point, it's a salvage mission, anywhere from 6 to 10. He fires on the left side and fouls it off. He's going to choose bowler's call. It's going to be a 6 box for Steve Kelly. That concludes the first game at 111. And we will be pausing because the Steve Kelly of the past is just going to be entering the scores on the virtual scoreboard to catch up with the current scoreboard that I am just superimposing after the fact. And then we will see Eric Hallee Sr. return to the approaches to finish his first game here at the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour. With 3 spares in the first game, in the 4th box, 7th box, and 8th box, Eric Hallee Sr. on 46 after 5. 5 boxes to go. This is Eric Hallee Sr. for the first time tonight on Lane 8 in Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire. Hallee Sr. fires. Off the right of the head pin, the 1, the 2, the 9, and the 10 are left on the deck for Eric Hallee Sr. And Eric Hallee Sr. releases on the head pin, but a little bit too full. The 9 and the 10 pins unharmed in that exchange. Eric Hallee Sr. overall led B North Division 4 all the way to the end of the season, ahead of Casey McCool, David LaRoche, and Faye Sawyer. That'll be a 9-box for Eric Hallee Sr. to start off the second half. 55 after 6 for Eric Hallee Sr. Overall, he finished 4th in B North. Eric Hallee Sr. has 1 game over 600 this season. He had 5 of 18 games totaling over 550. He bowled a seasonal high single twice, in Week 1 and in Week 7, versus Dominic Palladino, and then again versus Steve Kelly. That high single was 143. Eric Hallee Sr. dropping 6. The 4 horsemen left side are what he has left to contend with. 1, 2, 4, 7. Can he run it down? He runs down 3 of the 4 horsemen, missing the head pin. The head pin is all that stands. The last one standing. In the past 5 matches, Eric Hallee Sr. has taken 38 points, equal to the previous 5 matches, actually. Very consistent. Eric Hallee Sr. will take a 10-box. That should put him at 65 after 7 for Mr. Eric Hallee Sr. Eric Hallee Sr. has 10 of 18 matches with double-digit point take-home, which is always excellent in terms of playoff positioning and overall rankings. And in the past 5 matches, Eric Hallee Sr. had 56 spares, which is an increase of 14 from the previous 5, and it's generally 11.2 per match on average. Eric Hallee Sr. with the left side hay bale, 5 drop, second ball, takes out a few more, leaving the 2 and the 8 pins on lane 8 at Lakeside Lanes. Eric Hallee Sr. has a substantially higher match win rate when at home. It's an interesting statistic. He struggles when away, but when he's at home, he does pretty well. That's a 9-box for Eric Hallee Sr. Puts him at 74 after 8. Per home match, Eric Hallee Sr. again averages 8.44 points versus 6 points per away match on average this season, at least. In his past 5 home matches, he took 48 points. He started the regular season at a peak season average of 119.8, and to further elaborate on that, I remember talking with him, and he said he really struggled in the ACST in particular. He has some struggles with pacing compared to leagues, and the fact that he either has to bowl too fast or too slow really throws him off, and there's something about the ACST that he just struggles with greatly. And I can attest to that because I've seen him bowl in tournaments, and he bowls amazingly. And Eric Hallee Sr. runs down the 2, the 4, and the 7 for a spare that puts him at 84, plus a ball in the 9th. With 1 to go, it's always nice to finish the 9th box on a mark, because then it sort of allows you to make one last-ditch rally at the end in the 10th frame to try to just pile on the pins as much as you can. Eric Hallee Sr. filling that spare with, oh my goodness, that looks like 3. 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 9, and 10. That is a 3 fill. 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 9, 10. Bottle of red, bottle of white. And he takes out everything but what appears to be the 5 pin. He makes a great spare bid, but the offer is unfortunately not accepted by lane 8 at Lakeside Lanes. That sounds par for the course. So Eric Hallee Sr. will conclude with a 9-box in the first game, and that will put him at 96 versus Steve Kelly's 111. And that is how the first game will conclude. And it is more about, at this point, the total rather than individual performance in individual games. Meanwhile, we'll cut ahead to Steve Kelly dropping 7 here at the start of the second game now. And bear with me while I just switch down to the second game. And Steve Kelly will miss the spare, leaving the 3 pin on the deck. And for the 10 box, he'll get a 10 box to start out the second game here. That's 10 after 1 for Steve Kelly. Appreciate you watching this Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour match. This match was live streamed on Facebook. If you're watching this on Candlepin Bowling Network, this is a re-upload with an overdub. And I'm attempting to superimpose the scoreboard after the fact for Steve Kelly in particular, because we just didn't have a scoreboard operator while he was bowling. So while the scores do catch up at the half when Kelly runs back to input them, it's just while he's bowling, there's a bit less of a live update, so going to be superimposing that. Anyways, that's a spare by Steve Kelly, just dropping the 4 horseman right side in the 7 pin and taking everything out. So that's a spare in the second, 20 plus a ball after 2 for Steve Kelly. Just pausing for lane clear, lane maintenance. Sometimes it's a little awkward to clear a pin that's actively in the middle of the lane, and actually this one was rolling back as Bob Greco, one of the staff members at Lakeside Lanes, was yelling. He said, it's rolling back, but at that point, Steve Kelly already had rolled the ball. So sometimes that happens. Sometimes lane maintenance can be a little bit awkward. Steve Kelly's going to be filling a spare now after we paused for lane maintenance. Steve Kelly releases. He's on the head pin, and that looks like that's going to be a 7 drop. The 2, the 4, and the 10, where the 4 pin awkwardly slid a little bit. That should be 27 after 2 for Steve Kelly. Steve Kelly has the second most spares in the B class. He's number 9 in most 10s in the B class at the end of the regular season, and Steve Kelly makes a spare bid, but the wood doesn't play nice, leaves the 10 pin on the deck. He has a 2-way tie for 6th place in perfect box percentage for B class at 54%. He has 3 of 18 matches over 600 and 13 of 18 matches over 550. That's a 10 box for Steve Kelly. 37 after 3. He has a minimum of 8 spares per match. The majority of his matches have over double-digit point take-home, at least in the regular season, that is. Only 5 out of his 18 matches were without double-digit wins. In the past 5 matches, he took 57 points. That's plus 8 from the previous 5. Steve Kelly dropping 6, 1, 3, 6, 7 on lane 7 at Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire. 17 of 90 games were under 100 for Steve Kelly. That's a good ratio, 18%. Steve Kelly dropping the 1, the 2, and the 1, the 3, and the 6 pins, leaving the 7 pin on the deck. No spare, shooting for a 10 box. Kelly releases straight down the left, but just narrowly misses the 7 pin, taking a 9 box in the 4th for 46. Only 1 out of 10 Steve Kelly is only 1 of 10 bowlers in the B class with 10,000 seasonal total pins. In his past 5 away matches, he's taken 64 points. Steve Kelly off to the left of the head pin, half Worcester and then some. 1, 3, 6, 9, 4, 7 are left on the deck. Steve Kelly finished the regular season at peak season average of 112.4. He averages 8.44 points per home match and 6 points per away match. Steve Kelly chopping out a few more pins, leaving the 1, the 4, and the 7. And it'll be a 7, 8, 9, or 10 box salvage mission for Steve Kelly here. And he'll finish with a 7 box at the half, and that appears to be a 53 half for Steve Kelly. I'll pause real quick just to put those scores in. And then Eric Hallee Sr. will be returning to lane 7 to start out the second game here. Appreciate you watching this Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour match. I'm Steve Kelly of the future, talking about Steve Kelly of the past, and talking about Eric Hallee Sr. as well. We'll just jump ahead here to Eric Hallee Sr. starting out the first box of the second game. Eric Hallee Sr., last time he faced Steve Kelly in round 7, he took 12 points with a 6-15 series, 5 strikes, 16 spares, and 12 tens for Eric Hallee Sr. It was one of 2 matches in which he took 12 points this season in the regular season. That's an 8 drop for Eric Hallee Sr. He's left with the 1 and the 2 on the deck. And he fires for the spare. He misses to the right, oddly enough. Recently, Eric Hallee Sr. faced Casey McCool in Week 18 at Lakeside Lanes. He took 10 points with a 5-16 series with 1 strike, 13 spares, and 10 tens. That will be a 9 box for Eric Hallee Sr. to start out this second game here at the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour, this Class B quarterfinal playoff match. 9-1 for Eric Hallee Sr. versus 10-1 for Steve Kelly. Presently, Kelly leads by 59 at this uneven point in the game. But Eric Hallee Sr. still has 4 boxes to go before we actually assess the total at an equal footing. Eric Hallee Sr. punching out the 1, the 5, the 8, and the 9 pins for a spread eagle, the 4-pin spread eagle. Eric Hallee Sr. versus the Eagle. He takes out the 4 and the 7, leaving everything else. 2, 3, 6, 10 are what he has to shoot out for a 10 box here. Hallee Sr. fires on the right side for a salvage mission. He'll settle for an 8 box. That puts him at 17 after 2. Again, here at Lakeside Lanes, Eric Hallee Sr. lives in Manchester. His son, Eric Hallee Jr., helping out with the scoring on the CompuScore system. Many thanks to him. Eric Hallee Sr. is an impressive power lifter. Tim Lipke describes him as taller than Dad, although later on this evening after the match, I was speaking with Eric Hallee Sr., and he said that him and his son actually wear the same size clothes all around, so if he's taller than Dad, it's only by a little bit. Eric Hallee Sr. punching out 5, spread eagle minus the 10 pin this time, and he's shooting at what's left of the eagle. He takes 3 of the 5 pins out, leaving the 3 and the 6 pins on the deck. For a 10 box, Eric Hallee Sr. on lane 7 at Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire. He fires and he'll get a 10. Slowly ramping up here. That's a 10 box for Hallee Sr. That puts him at 27 after 3. Still trailing Steve Kelly at this point in the match, but anything can happen. This is playoff bowling here at the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour. Eric Hallee Sr. bowls out of Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire. I watched him throw a great series of games at the Thanksgiving 2023 doubles tournament, and he definitely cashed. I think he placed quite well, if I remember. Eric Hallee Sr. dropping 5, leaving the 1, 3, 7, 8, 10 on the deck. Eric Hallee Sr. operates complex construction equipment such as cranes, and he needs a very specific license to do so. I remember hearing that from him. That's a spare by Eric Hallee Sr. He cleans up rather nicely. And overall, Eric Hallee Sr. is just a fantastic person to talk to. So that's 37 plus a ball for Eric Hallee Sr. in the 4th, with 1 to go before he sits, and then we'll assess the total. So stay tuned for that. You're watching the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour. I'm Steve Kelly, commentating a past version of Steve Kelly versus Eric Hallee Sr. at Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire. Good as always to have you along. That's a 2-fill. That's a painful 2-fill on the spare for Eric Hallee Sr. That's a left side half Worcester. 1, 3, 5, 6. Well, it's a left side half Worcester. He takes out a few more on the spare bid, leaves the 5, 7, 10. That's known as the Matt Zusi Special or the Woolworth Split. Plenty of deadwood around it, although there is one that is fairly out forward in front of the 5 pin. We'll see if that helps or hurts him. He takes out just the 5 pin. It's going to be an 8 box for a 47.5 for Eric Hallee Sr. At this point in the match, Steve Kelly leads in the match by just 21 in the total and is up in the game by 6. That is your score update and an equal part of the match to make things a little bit more fair. Meanwhile, we'll say hello to Steve Kelly one more time here. This time on lane 8 to conclude the second half of the second game of this 5-game playoff series in Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire. Last time Steve Kelly faced Eric Hallee Sr. in round 7, he took 2 points. He threw 572, but only took 2 points because Eric Hallee Sr. was just on fire that night. 2 strikes, 15 spares, and 6 tens. Wasn't poor bowling, it was just Eric Hallee Sr. bowled better. Steve Kelly struggling with just these difficult leaves. No spare bid on the 5, 6, 10. He's left with the 6-10 for a 10 box. And he fires on that 6-10. Narrowly nudges down the 6 pin. And that will be a 9 box for Steve Kelly to start out the second half. As we often say in Candlepin, when something humorous like that happens, we say, don't hurt him. And I remember saying in the moment, I said, I don't believe in violence. And that certainly wasn't a violent hit on the 6 pin. Steve Kelly firing down the center and drifts off to the left. That's a left side washout. 1, 5, 3, 6, 7, 9, 10 on the deck. And Steve Kelly is going to bid for a spare on the 1-3 pocket. He hits the 1-3 pocket, but the 5 and the 7 stay. This shot's been happening a lot at Lakeside Lanes here tonight. Something about that 5 pin just glued to the ground, no matter what lane it is. For an 8, 9, or 10, Steve Kelly releases down the center, just takes out the 5 pin for another 9 box. Second 9 box in a row. That puts him at 71 after 7 at this point in the match. 71 after 7? I know if you average 100, you just like to generally average the first digit of your score with the number of the box. So 71 after 7 is great for someone with a 100 average, but if you don't have a 100 average, then it gets a little bit tedious. Steve Kelly in the 1-3 pocket, dropping 6, leaving the diamond left side with no wood, the 2-4-5-8. As they once said on the Channel 5 Candlepin Bowling show, the diamond frequently wins. Steve Kelly versus the diamond. He tries to take it out, but he's too far to the left, taking out only one of the 4 pins, leaving the 2, 5, and 8 pins on the deck for a 7, 8, 9, or 10 box for Steve Kelly. And he fires straight full, leaving only the 5 pin. That's a 9 box. The third 9 box in a row for Steve Kelly. That puts him at 80 after 8. With 2 to go before he concludes the second game here. When you're a bowler averaging over 100 and you see 80 and 8, you know it's go time. Then you have to start getting some marks and really start to make things happen here. Steve Kelly, 80 after 8, releases first ball, the 9th frame on the head pin. Decent spread of pins, left with a 7-10 with some wood. This could go. There's 3 pieces of wood, one particularly in the center. And if you ask me, possibly redlining it or maybe hitting it slightly high or slightly low, the right combination of the impact on the ball may cause a pinball, and he does precisely that. He will spare the 7-10 with the assistance of the wood. A spare in the 9th for Steve Kelly. That's 90 plus a ball in 9. Appreciate you coming out to watch this Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour match. Most recently, Steve Kelly faced Joe Rushlow in the regular season in technically it was round 15 at Lakeside Lanes. Series total was 550 in that match. That's a 7 fill for Steve Kelly, by the way. See if he can spare this up. It's going to be a difficult shot. It's the 4-9-7, and he'll take the 4 and the 4 only. Leaving the 7-9, just have to pick a stick at this point. There's no wood to assist. To conclude the second game, Steve Kelly will take an 8 box, and that should be 105 for the second game for Steve Kelly. As he runs back to input those scores and catch up everything else, we will now have Eric Hallee Sr. return to the decks of Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire. Good as always to have you along with us. And be sure to check out the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour page on Facebook and Candlepin Bowling Network on YouTube for more ACST playoff action. So Eric Hallee Sr. coming off of a 47.5, fires a little bit too much to the right of the head pin, leaving the 4 horsemen left side plus the 9 pin on the deck. Shooting for a spare, he has to run down the left side 4 horsemen and hope something picks up the 9 pin, but he misses and takes only the 9 pin out. So it's now going to be a 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10 box for Eric Hallee Sr. on lane 8 in Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire. He releases, he runs down 3 of the 4 horsemen for a 9 box. That's going to be 56 and 6 for Eric Hallee Sr. With 4 boxes to go, Eric Hallee Sr. needs to get to 105 or better to maintain the pace. In these playoff matches, it's all about the total rather than individual points. So if you see point counters on the on-screen scoreboard, don't worry about them too much because they are not a factor in these matches. Eric Hallee Sr. dropping 7. That's the 2, the 4, and the 8 pin on the deck. Small bundle of pins. Hitting the 2-4 pocket should take everything out given the wood. And Eric Hallee Sr. though misses to the right, misses the object pin, takes out a pin in the back row, leaving the 2 and the 4. The 8 pin was the only pin that went down. For an 8, 9, or 10 box, Eric Hallee Sr. releases, and he takes the last 2 out, salvaging it for a 10 box. That puts him at 66 after 7. With 3 to go to conclude the second game here shortly. Eric Hallee Sr. down in the game by 39 at this point. Needs 3 boxes. Has 3 boxes to get 39 or more points to maintain pace. He drops, oh boy, that's an interesting smattering of pins, leaving the 1, 2, 4, 7, 5, and 10. It's going to be an interesting spare leave opportunity. He misses the head pin again, leaving the 1, the 4, and the 7 on the deck. So again, it's going to be a 7, 8, 9, or 10 box for Eric Hallee Sr. And for the 10 box, he'll take a 9 box. And that should put him at 75 in 8. 2 to go. It's do or die time for Eric Hallee Sr. here in the second. Game 2 of 5 in this playoff series. This is the quarterfinal round. Basically, the wild card folks battle the top seeds in divisions, and then we slowly start eliminating folks until we get into the semifinals and then the finals, of course. And in this context, we're just talking about the B class, the B North class, before we start incorporating B South, and then we start doing North versus South and all of that. Eric Hallee Sr. dropping 9 out of the gate, leaving the 7 pin with some wood. It looks favorable. Looks like it should be an easy spare for Eric Hallee Sr. Will he get it? He fires. He gets it. That's a spare for Eric Hallee Sr. late in the second string. 85 plus a ball for Eric Hallee Sr. at this point in the match. In the game, that is, really. Eric Hallee Sr. with a total of 181. And he's down in the game by 20. But there's still a box and a half that he could utilize to reduce that deficit. Eric Hallee Sr. fires. He fills 7. 3, 6, 7 are left on the deck. That's a 7 fill for Hallee Sr. That puts him at 92 after 9. This will be a bit more of a difficult spare leave. It's a 3, 6, 7. He releases, and he will spare it. Amazing. He will take the 3, 6, and one of those pins will knock over the 7 at the last possible moment in the back corner. That's a second spare. That's 102 plus a ball for Eric Hallee Sr. And he may have salvaged this. A fill on this will surpass Steve Kelly's 105. Eric Hallee Sr. may have just saved himself a little bit here. And he will fill that spare with a bomb of a strike. And in the 10th frame, if it's on a spare, it's just a fill of 10s. That will put him at 112. 112 to 105 for Steve Kelly. Or for Eric Hallee. 112 to 105. Eric Hallee Sr. victorious over Steve Kelly by 7 in the game. Steve Kelly only up in the total by 8 by this point. Eric Hallee Sr. reducing that deficit significantly by this point. Anyways, we're going to move on to the third game, wasting no time here. And Steve Kelly will be taking the approaches once again here in just a moment here at Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire. Good as always to have you along with us. Thank you for watching this Friday night match at Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire, live streamed on May 24th, 2024 at approximately 7 p.m. for those historians many years in the future who want to know. Steve Kelly back on lane 7 to start out the third game now. He only has plus 8 on the total, 216 to 208 after 2 games. In this playoff match, Steve Kelly on lane 7, opening ball of the third game. To the left of the head pin, it is a half Worcester, plus a friend, plus the 5 pin, that is. Working on trying to get the 1-3 pocket to spare the half Worcester, and the ball sails right through the same hole where the first ball was. But unfortunately, there are no pins there, so you already got him. Can't get him twice. So Steve Kelly for the salvage mission on the half Worcester. On the third ball, he releases, and wow, what a consistent ball. But unfortunately, that doesn't really mean anything in this context. That's going to be a really painful 3-box for Steve Kelly in the first. But, of course, I've heard many pros say sometimes the best games start with the worst first boxes. I have heard that the best games start with a 6-box. I don't know about a 3-box, so we're going to find out if Steve Kelly can make that happen. On lane 7, Kelly fires again, a little off to the left. Once again, very similar to the previous string, or box that is, excuse me. He drops 6 this time, though. 1, 3, 6, 7 on the deck. The 1-3 pocket is the object pocket for the spare. Kelly fires. He's on the 3, but doesn't connect with the 1. So he's left with the 1 and the 7 for a 10 box. That is the Bermuda Triangle minus the 10 pin. He'll connect with the 1 pin and leave the 7. That'll be a 9 box for Steve Kelly in the second. 12 after 2 for Steve Kelly. Appreciate having you along with us at this Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour match. And be sure to stay tuned for plenty of exciting playoff matches. It is your favorite time of year, playoff bowling season. Steve Kelly on the 1-3 pocket, fires, drops 6, leaving the left side inverted check mark. That is the 2-4-5-7. This shot can be both easy and hard at the same time. You just have to make sure you hit your object pocket. And Kelly misses that. He connects with the 4 and the 7, leaving the 2 and the 5 on the deck. And Kelly will be shooting for a 10 box, 8, 9, or 10. He'll take a 10. Best possible outcome on the third ball. It's a 10 box for Kelly, 22 after 3. It's a little bit alarmingly low, but that's the best you can do when you open with a 3 box. Steve Kelly has been bowling at Lakeside Lanes in Nashua, New Hampshire since 1994. Some nicknames he's picked up through the years are the Surgeon or the Kelly Express. You may also see Skelly on the back of his shirt. That's just simply first initial last name. It's an endearing nickname given to him from a dear friend who passed away in 2007. That's why he keeps it on his shirt. Steve Kelly will be representing Team USA for the World Candlepin tournament in 2024 at Lakeside Lanes on Team Massholes. Anyways, that's a spare by Steve Kelly. Runs down the right side 4 horsemen. But yeah, Steve Kelly will be on Team Massholes along with Matt Susi, John Blaze, Jeff Champagne, and several other folks. My apologies, I'm just not remembering them off the top of my head. Steve Kelly filling that spare with 7, leaving the 5, 6, and 10 on the deck. So that will be a 7 fill on that spare, 39 after 4. Again, still trying to salvage that opener of a 3 box. The 5, 6, 10 with some wood on the left side. I would probably play the wood on the left or the right. Kelly tries to play the wood on the right, doesn't kick over enough to take the 5 pin out. Now he's stuck with only the 5 pin for a 10 box opportunity. 9 or 10 for Steve Kelly. He'll take a 10 box to conclude the half with a hard-fought 49 after 5 after all is said and done. We'll make sure that that is correct once Past Me goes back to the scoreboard and just inputs the actual scores. Anyways, let's say hello to Eric Hallee Sr. once again to start out the third game of 5 here at Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire. Lakeside Lanes opened on November 20th, 1959, and is nearly the same age as Lakeside Lanes at roughly 64 years, as I mentioned before. Lakeside Lanes' website states how specific the construction got, talking about 40 out of a thousandths of an inch in terms of placing the wood. And it took a month's time to place that wood back in the 50s. That was crazy. Eric Hallee Sr. with a right side half Worcester minus the 7 pin, and he sails through the hole where he took out the half Worcester. Very reminiscent of Steve Kelly's opening ball and opening frame. We'll see if Eric Hallee Sr. can salvage this for a 10 box, and he will. Wow, a piece of wood comes to take out the final pin. So Eric Hallee Sr. will open with the 10 box. Puts him at 10 after 1. Better than a 3 box, certainly. Lakeside Lanes has a soundproofing system where, quote-unquote, 85% of all sound is absorbed. Tim Lipke and his son Shane Lipke are the owner and heir apparent for the facility. We also have Bobby Greco, who's there all the time. All of them, though, do an amazing job at keeping Lakeside Lanes looking and feeling great. There's plenty of leagues, tons of fun pools, such as 4 strikes in a row, 50 over your average in the orange pin pool. And Eric Hallee Sr. is just having a heck of a time out there right now. Looks like he's got the 1-7-10-6-9. And after 2 balls, he is definitely on a salvage mission right now on lane 7, and he fires off to the left. Ouch, that is going to be a 5 box for Eric Hallee Sr. So Steve Kelly's 3 box is met with a 5 box for Eric Hallee Sr. That's 15 after 2. And we have a game here, folks. Steve Kelly is up in the total by 42 and up in the game by 34, but Eric Hallee Sr. made a pretty impressive comeback in the previous game here, and he's looking to continue that streak. He washes out the left side. 1, 5, 3, 6, 9, and 10 pins are on the deck. He's shooting at this for a spare. There's no wood on the deck to help him out. Eric Hallee Sr. fires, and he takes a few more out. He misses his object pocket. He's left with the 1 and the 9 on the deck. And now he's shooting for a 10 box to conclude the third frame. Both bowlers struggling here in the third, trying to get pin action. Been hearing about that about Lakeside Lanes as of late. Just sometimes the pins just don't do what you want them to do despite aiming correctly. But that can really be said about Candlepin bowling as a whole. Anyways, that's 23 after 3 for Eric Hallee Sr. Compare that to Steve Kelly's 22 after 3. So, slightly low-scoring game. Both Steve Kelly and Eric Hallee Sr. were joking about that before the start of the match. We said, we don't know how this is going to go. We might get some weird pin action tonight, and we both just might look like we belong in like C or D or something. But anyways, Eric Hallee Sr. dropping 7, leaving the 1, the 2, and the 4 on the deck. The 4 pin is an orange pin. So yeah, about the orange pin pool. The short of it is there's 1 orange pin in all these pin setters at Lakeside Lanes. If it gets put down as the head pin and you enter the pool, that's a spare by Eric Hallee Sr., by the way. It's 33 plus a ball after 4. But if you put into the pool for the orange pin and you get a striker a spare while the orange pin is the head pin, when the pin setter puts it down, you get entered into a raffle. It's a cool idea. It kind of introduces somewhat of a random element because when pins get put down by the pin setter, you never know what they're going to get put down as. It's not true random calculations, but it's close enough. Eric Hallee Sr. will fill that spare with 7, and that will put him at 40 after 4. And he's got a rough leave here, though. Fires on the 3, 9, 10, and he gets the 3, 9, 10 for another spare, and he double spares it towards the end of the half here for 50 plus a ball after 5. Eric Hallee Sr. making miracles out of a mediocre half. Putting the pressure on Steve Kelly. That's 49 after 5 for Steve Kelly. So now Steve Kelly has some work to do. He's only up in the total by 7 and down in the game by 1. Currently 265 to 258, Kelly versus Hallee Sr. respectively. At Lakeside Lanes, the ball returns are positioned a bit further down the approach, about 4 or 5 feet from what I can tell. This will slightly alter your perception of the lane length as well as maybe mess with where your starting position is when you go to bowl. Steve Kelly drops 6, 1, 3, 6, 10. Right side, 4 horsemen on the deck. Lakeside Lanes, as you can see, uses manual scoring and manual lane resetting, with CompuScore being the software used. Steve Kelly missing the head pin of the 4 horsemen, taking 3 of the 4 out. And he's shooting for a 10 box now versus the head pin. Kelly fires down the center but drifts to the right. That's a 9 box for Steve Kelly in the 6th. That puts him at 58 after 6. At Lakeside Lanes, there are slightly different guiding arrows compared to Leda Lanes'. They are sort of positioned a little bit differently in terms of how they line up, and if you throw a ball and you use those arrows as guidance, that slight Z-axis positioning may slightly mess with you a little bit at Lakeside Lanes. So I might suggest looking at the foul line rather than the lob line specifically, rather than the arrows. And that's a spare by Steve Kelly after a 7 drop. Needed that spare for sure. That's 68 and a ball after 7. Lakeside Lanes is considered a quote-unquote slower house, which often means bowlers need to throw a bit of a slower and more methodical ball to ensure they don't simply punch out pins or get weird leaves. The house isn't super unforgiving, though, but in recent months, I'd say it's gotten a little bit tougher. Steve Kelly will fill that spare with 7 and leaves the 3 remaining pins very close to one another. And Kelly will take that out for another spare. 7 fill spare. Salvage mission here, 85 plus a ball after 8 by my count. Lakeside Lanes has new tile flooring around the score table areas before the lane approaches. They look really spiffy and were put in around early fall of 2023. And Steve Kelly dropping 8, filling that spare with 8. Trying to pile on the pins in the second half to sort of recover from a disastrous first half. That should be 93 after 8. We will confirm once Past Me returns to the scoreboard. But in the meantime, that's a third spare in a row for Steve Kelly. That 8-drop spare, that's 3 spares in a row. 4 marks, 103 plus a ball after 9. Lakeside has a little bar and a dining room entitled The 25th Lane, which features an impressively stocked bar for the relatively small space it's in. There's 24 lanes at Lakeside, so the joke is the bar is the 25th lane, because the bar, oh my goodness, look at that fill, a quarter Worcester. Takes out the 2 and the 2-pin only. That's a 1 fill for Steve Kelly. Welcome to Lakeside Lanes. That is the quarter Worcester. That is the kind of pin action you can sometimes get at Lakeside, just unexplainable shots like that. Steve Kelly tries to salvage it. Pin still falling and nearly converts it for a spare. Everything goes except for the 10 pin, the orange pin, in the back right corner. Trying to make lemonade out of lemons, and he almost achieves it. Never really understood that saying in this context, but hey. Steve Kelly tries to go for the 10. The wood deflects the ball away. That's going to be a 9 box, and that should finish Steve Kelly at 113 in the third. So the die is cast for Eric Hallee Sr. with his 50 plus a ball half. And we'll pause just to make sure that future me did an okay job at scoring past me. Make sure that all works out. We're also going to pause for lane maintenance. Lane 8 throughout the night here at Lakeside Lanes had an issue where the sweeper wasn't quite picking up the pins in the gutters. So you may see us frequently having to clean up the lanes, and that's simply just something we had to live with. So yes, that is 113 for Steve Kelly, a 4-mark 113 in the third game. The first half was a little bit disastrous, but he really salvaged it in the second half. Eric Hallee Sr., meanwhile, 50 plus a ball after 5. So we'll welcome back Eric Hallee Sr. on lane 8. He fires, wasting no time, dropping 6, filling that spare with 6. Decent fill. He definitely needed that fill. It's 56 after 5 for Eric Hallee Sr., and he's bidding for another spare here. The 4 horsemen left side, the 1, the 2, the 4, and the 7 pins on the deck. He fires. He's on the 1 pin. The 1 pin dances around to the 7 pin, leaving the 2 and the 4. So no spare for Eric Hallee Sr., no triple spare. Eric Hallee Sr. for an 8, 9, or 10. He'll get an 8 box. He misses the pins entirely. That puts him at 64 after 6. With the recent closure of Park Place Lanes from Windham, New Hampshire, Lakeside Lanes has gotten a lot busier, inheriting quite a few bowlers from the Windham house, which was a much larger house than Lakeside. Lakeside Lanes also got a bunch of new chairs that were part of Park Place Lanes, and they themselves had completed a bit of a renovation right before they closed, so a lot of this equipment is brand new. That's a right side half Worcester for Eric Hallee Sr. Right next to Lakeside Lanes is Mojo's, which is a great little place that does breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and has Guinness on tap for those who care. And Eric Hallee Sr., wow, just takes out a few more pins. And again, remember my lecture about unexplainable leaves at Lakeside Lanes? This is one of them. Eric Hallee Sr. just on a salvage mission, and he'll finish with an 8 box. 8 box for Eric Hallee Sr., 72 after 7. 3 boxes to go. He has to catch Steve Kelly's 113. And is currently down in the match by a decent amount. Eric Hallee Sr., here's some stats for you in case you're a visual learner and want to learn up about Eric Hallee Sr. and his 9,568 seasonal total pins. That's 400 and some change off of the 10,000 seasonal total pins that Steve Kelly has achieved. Thanks to Kevin Davis for going down just to clear a pin, a wayward pin. Kevin Davis, by the way, awesome guy. He's been around forever. He's been bowling for 3+ decades. And spoiler alert, after this match, both me and Eric Hallee Sr. talked with Shane Lipke and Kevin Davis for quite a while after this match, and we had just great conversations just talking about random things in the bowling world, both past and present. And wow, Eric Hallee Sr. punching out the right side, another right side half Worcester. So he has quite a bit to do here for a spare bid, and once again, look at that, it's a repeat of the previous box. I almost wondered if I rewound here, but no. It's another 4, 5, 6, 2, 7, 10 leave. No wood at all. The pins just jumping over one another. There's something about Lakeside where this just happens a lot, and you've seen it. You can be right on the pins and still get a little bit screwed over. That's a 6 box for Eric Hallee Sr. Not what he was looking for. That's about 78 after 8 to Steve Kelly's 113. Kelly up in the match by 43 and up in the game by 35. That's the deficits that Eric Hallee Sr. has to overcome at this point. Neither bowler has bowled any strikes. 9 spares for Kelly and 6 spares for Hallee Sr. so far, and another right side half Worcester minus the 5-pin for Eric Hallee Sr. Very, very consistent performance by Eric Hallee Sr., but unfortunately, that isn't really paying off for him right now. And he misses the object pin and takes out a few more, left with the 1, the 8, and the 6 pins on the deck with no wood for a 7, 8, 9, or 10 box possibility for Eric Hallee Sr. in the 9th frame of the 3rd game. He fires on the head pin, takes out only the head pin. That will put him at an 8 box and 86 in 9. And this has become interesting at the end of the 3rd game here. Eric Hallee Sr. is really struggling. With 1 box to go, Eric Hallee Sr. See if some of the magic from the previous game can come back for the 3rd here. Misses the head pin, drops 5, 4 horsemen right side in the 8 pin. 1, 3, 6, 8, 10 are on the deck for Eric Hallee Sr. And Eric Hallee Sr. fires. He's on the 1, 3 pocket, but he doesn't take out the 10, oddly enough. That was just bad luck. So he's looking at a potential 96 game if he can connect with the 10 pin here. We'll see what Hallee Sr. can do. He will take that 10 pin out for a 10 box. That will put him at 96. And that will put us at 329 to 304. Kelly up in the match by 25 and up in the game by 17 at the end of the 3rd here. I want to thank you for watching this Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour Class B North Playoff quarterfinal match between Eric Hallee Sr. and Steve Kelly at Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire. Appreciate you watching. We still got 2 games to go here. Plenty of bowling to go before we determine who wins and who loses. It is a game based on the total rather than points. Steve Kelly fires, wasting no time, dropping 7. 3, 5, 6 on the deck. Just a triangle that he's shooting at for a spare opportunity. This is a surprisingly tricky shot. You can be on it and still miss. We'll see what Steve Kelly can do, and that precisely happens. He's on the left pocket, the 3-5 pocket, but the 6 pin doesn't go. The pins just spread out. It's one of those shots that could have gone in other houses, but I call that a Lakeside shot, and Steve Kelly misses the last pin for a 9 box. Excellent first ball, excellent second ball, but sometimes in Candlepin that isn't good enough, surprisingly. And I have no explanation for that, so that's a 9 box for Steve Kelly to start out the 4th game here. Steve Kelly on lane 7, orange pin, head pin, fires, and gets a left side half Worcester. Ball drifts to the left. And spoiler alert, future me, I was realizing what I was doing kind of as this match progressed, and I was trying to make some micro adjustments, but it's one of those situations, and I remember this advice from John Winchell. He said, don't try to adjust too much when you're in a competitive match, because sometimes that can mess you up even more. So it's one of those between a rock and a hard place situations, and ouch, that is the 1, 7, 10, 4. That's a 6 box for Steve Kelly. Ball just not going where he wants it to go. That's 15 after 2 for Steve Kelly now. And at this point, Steve Kelly, at this uneven point in the match, he's up in the total by 40 and up in the game by 15, because Eric Hallee Sr. hasn't bowled yet here in the 4th game, but we'll reassess that at the half. Steve Kelly firing down the center on the head pin again. It's a head pin shot, but it's the spread eagle, the dreaded spread eagle. The 1, the 5, and the 8 pins were taken out. A 3-pin spread eagle. Frustrating, difficult shot. Again, another Lakeside-esque shot. Par for the course, and Steve Kelly will take a lemon drop on the right side, just the 6-pin. And we have a bit of a Picasso painting of a leave at the end for a 10-box opportunity for Steve Kelly. And he fires, he takes 2 more out, and my goodness, that looks like a 6-box for Steve Kelly, a hard-fought 6-box. That should put him at 21 after 3, I believe. And wow, yeah, the struggle has really been real in this half. It was a little bit of a thing in the past game first half for Kelly as well, but he kind of recovered in the second half, so That's just to be expected sometimes. He drops 6. He's on the head pin. Another head pin shot, 2, 4, 7, 10. With some wood, the 2-4 pocket should be a favorable shot opportunity with some wood in between, and he will connect a little bit too hard with the 2 pin for no spare. 7, 8, 9, or 10 box for Steve Kelly. It was the right idea, the right object pin, but just a little bit too full. Switching bowling balls. Spoiler alert, one of my bowling balls has a hole in it. That's why you see me switching bowling balls often, because the one I've been picking up is the one with the hole in it. It's because it tends to skip down the lane a little bit. Steve Kelly will take a 9 box in the 4th. No mark. 30 after 4. This is difficult to watch, and especially when you're hitting the right pins and just the wrong action is happening, because that is just a situation where you wonder what you can do differently, but you just can't really change anything because the ball is going where you want it to go, and you don't want to really change that formula all that much. And just look at that, right on the head pin again, but again, too full. A lot of times with the spread eagle, it has to do with throwing the ball too hard, but Kelly was throwing it kind of at a medium speed. The 1 and the 5 pin go out. It's a 2-pin spread eagle, the hardest spread eagle of all, and look at that. He takes out only the 2 pin. And it doesn't even take out the 8 pin behind it. It just kind of sails around it. And this is the overall thesis of what is going on in this half right now for Steve Kelly. Steve Kelly hasn't missed a pin in this box, but he only has an 8 box to show for it. And in this half, he's going to conclude with, drumroll, 38 after 5. A hard-fought 38 after 5. My goodness. That may have just handed some things to Eric Hallee Sr. on a silver platter, for better or for worse, whether it was intended or accidental or both, or who knows. Welcome to Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire. Eric Hallee Sr. might smell some blood in the water in this playoff match. Sometimes something can happen at the worst possible time. I think they call that Murphy's Law or something. Eric Hallee Sr. will be taking the approaches of Lakeside Lanes on Lane 7 once again in just a few moments here. Not too far away from Lakeside Lanes is also the Dairyfield Restaurant and Country Club. If you're in the market for well-priced drinks, snacks, and food, they're a really good option. Eric Hallee Sr. dropping 8. That's the 2 and the 7 pins on the deck. For a spare leave, it was a good drop by Eric Hallee Sr. Sometimes a bowler just has better leaves, and there's not much you can do about that. Eric Hallee Sr. will clean up for a spare, lay up of a spare, and he will get that rather handily. On the object pin, plenty of wood to assist. That's 10 plus a ball after 1 for Eric Hallee Sr. Off to the races, as they say. At the Dairyfield Restaurant and Country Club, they have this thing on football Sundays during the NFL regular season where they spin a wheel whenever there's a scoring play, and all of the numbers on the wheel are mapped to drinks, and they usually put a big discount on that drink. That's a 9 fill for Eric Hallee Sr. in the first, 19 after 1. For the spare, he will get the next spare, second spare in a row for Eric Hallee Sr. Perfect so far, 29 after 2, plus a ball even. Kelly up in the total by 34 and up in the game by 9, but it's only plus 9 in the game, and Eric Hallee Sr. has 3 boxes to go, so that is a bit of an alarming pace right there. Exciting for Eric Hallee Sr., though. He fires to the right, too much to the right. That's a 3 fill by the looks of it. Still a 13, 32 after 3 for Hallee Sr. As bad of a fill as that was, it's still significantly better than Kelly's no-mark first half. He misses the object pin. He's left with a 1, 3, 7, and 8. And now he's shooting for a 10 box, 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10 box for Eric Hallee Sr. He fires. He's on the 1 and the 3, leaving the 7 and the 8 for 40 after 3 with that 8 box. And he's taken the game lead by 2 by this point, and he still has 2 boxes to go. The match lead is still in Kelly's favor by 23, but it's a bit of an uncomfortable lead at this point, because when Eric Hallee Sr. can chain marks like this and get spares and spare fills like that, and especially with a strike like that, that was a bomb of a strike, a hammer of a strike for Eric Hallee Sr. And this is where he can really start piling on the pins. I know when I'm in this position and I see something like that happen in my head, that's when I really get energized and I go, okay, it's time to bury this other person. And that's definitely what Eric Hallee Sr. is likely thinking right now. He thinks he caught a break. 50 after 4 plus a fill ball, 2 fill balls on that strike. Fires a little bit too hard and too forward to the left of the head pin, dropping 5 so far. 1, 3, 7, 8, and 10 for Eric Hallee Sr. And he's looking to clean up. Let's see if he can get a spare on strike. He's on the head pin, but an awkward split of pins leaves him with the 8 and the 10 pins. So that's an 8 fill for 58 after 4 for Eric Hallee Sr. For the 10 box, he will get a 9 box for 67. An impressive 67.5, effectively the polar opposite of Steve Kelly's half. 67 to 38, that swings everything in Eric Hallee Sr.'s favor at this point. He's up in the total by 4 and up in the game by 29, 371 to 367. That half really saved Eric Hallee Sr.'s entire match right there. That may have been a pivotal point. We'll find out what happens here in these final boxes. And by final boxes, I mean we still have a game and a half, but it's a game and a half's worth of competition left, but effectively the lead that Steve Kelly enjoyed up to this point has been nearly erased, and that is something to be concerned about. Steve Kelly on lane 8. He fires to the left of the head pin and drops 6, drops 7. Definitely needed that. He's left with a 1-3-9 on lane 8 at Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire. Not on a fill or anything, but it's a decent spare leave opportunity. Pressure is on. Sometimes the pressure can mean a lot. Steve Kelly's ball drifts to the right a little bit too much. Takes out everything but the head pin on lane 8. And Kelly fires, and he's off to the right, taking a 9 box. A frustrating 9 box for what could have been a potential spare. Puts him at 47 after 6. With 4 boxes to go before we finish the 4th game for Steve Kelly specifically. Kelly prepares to fire and fires on lane 8. Explosion of pins, leaving, my goodness, the 5 and the 7 pin once again. Not a lot of wood to help him. The left side setback is what this shot is often called, and you have to play the 5 pin in some way. Playing the 7 pin will not take the 5 out in most cases. He takes the 5 and only the 5, a little bit too full. Now for a 9 or 10 box for Steve Kelly. My goodness. Some of these leaves have just been gnarly. And he will foul that off for a 9 box. Frustrating 9 box once again. No marks after 7. 56 after 7 for Kelly. And at this point, it's a difficult situation for Steve Kelly to manage at this point. And to add insult to injury, we now have to pause for some lane maintenance. But luckily, Kelly hasn't knocked down any pins yet while clearing this lane out. Again, the sweeper on the pin setter on lane 8 was a little bit slanted, and Steve Kelly has to throw a 3rd ball to try to really clear that channel out because the sweeper will not clear that out. So resetting, pausing for lane maintenance. Anyways, great to have you along. Thanks for watching this Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour, this rebroadcast of a match from Friday, May 24th. The ACST Class B North playoffs between Eric Hallee Sr. and Steve Kelly. Steve Kelly, the away bowler, Eric Hallee Sr., the home bowler. Good as always to have you along with us. I'm Steve Kelly, the commentator from a day later. Steve Kelly fires, drops 6, 2, 4, 6, 10. No wood. Another difficult leave, and no wood split. 2, 4, 6, 10 for Steve Kelly. For the spare, takes out just 1 pin to the 4. A little bit too full and a little bit too much to the left. 2, 6, 10 is what Steve Kelly has to shoot at. For the salvage mission, Steve will take 1 more out for an 8 box in 8. That puts him at 64 after 8. And at this point, it'll be an interesting last 2 boxes for Steve Kelly. And he fires on the left of the head pin, but still on the head pin regardless. That's a 6 drop. 3, 7, 9, 10 is what he has to shoot at. This is a decent spare leave opportunity. 3, 7, 9, 10. And he fires on the object wood on the object pin, but the ball doesn't pinball enough, and believe it or not, one of the pins right behind the object pin doesn't fall. He's left with the 7 and the 9. The 9 pin's still wiggling even. No wood once again. Again, some of these leaves and shots are just, it's just no mercy at Lakeside Lanes. That's an 8 box for Steve Kelly, and that's a no mark. That is a no mark 72 after 9 for Steve Kelly. It's been one frustrating game, let me tell you that. One of those things where if you're hitting correctly, there's not much you can really do. Just have to kind of hope for the best. Steve Kelly off to the right of the head pin that time. 4 horsemen left side in the 9 pin. No wood once again. Not the best of leaves, but it is somewhat of a makeable spare. Kelly fires, hopes to get the object pin, connects with the object pin, but too full. Just takes out the 1 and the 9. 2, 4, 7 are what are left in the deck. For the salvage mission, Steve Kelly fires for the 10 box, and he'll take an 8 box. And wow, no marks in this game at all for Steve Kelly. That's an 80 after 10 for Steve Kelly. A frustrating 80. That may have set a couple things in motion here. We will find out shortly what that will entail. Thank you for watching this Atlantic Campus Singles Tour match. Again, Class B playoffs. We'll be seeing Eric Hallee Sr. show up on lane 8 again to finish the 4th game here in just a few moments, so stay tuned. So we're just waiting on the scores just to be entered by past me. Meanwhile, we have Eric Hallee Sr. about to finish the 4th game. He's sitting at a 67.5 after 3 marks, 2 spares, and 1 strike, an 8 and a 9, and he is getting ready to start on lane 8 at Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire. And he opens up with a 7 drop, leaving the 2, the 4, and the 5 pins on the deck with no wood, off to the 1-3 pocket. We've seen a lot of these tonight, these leaves with no wood. The wood seems to scatter rather quickly and doesn't stick around. But Eric Hallee Sr. breaks the triangle, takes it out for another spare for 77 plus a ball. In the 6th, Eric Hallee Sr. already on a tear to start out the second half. And now he's going to fill that spare. He's on it. He's on the head pin, but almost a little too full. It is a decent break, but it's a little bit awkward in terms of the leave. He's got the 7 and the 9 and the 10 to deal with. So a piece of wood between the 9 and the 10. The wood between the 9 and the 10 might be the ticket. He takes the 9 and the 10. A piece of wood scatters over and takes the 7 pin. That's another spare. 2 fast spares for Eric Hallee Sr. That's 94 after 7. Plus a ball even. Eric Hallee Sr. getting the great breaks and the great spares. And he's capitalizing on that. It's all about the leaves on the first ball. So Eric Hallee Sr. has 3 boxes to get to 80, but he's already done that. In fact, he already did that by the 6th box to begin with, so he locked it up pretty quickly. Eric Hallee Sr. dropping 7, possibly 8. The 10 pin wiggling, the 10 pin stays. That is another 7 fill on a spare. 2 spare 7s in a row. Eric Hallee Sr. now at 101 after 7. And for the spare, he can't get a 3-peat. He takes out 2 and leaves the 10 pin. For the 10 box, Eric Hallee Sr. is shooting for just some pin action. And he misses that 10. He'll take a 9. After that double spare, he's at 110 after 8. With 2 to go here at the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour, this Class B North playoff match at Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire. Lakeside Lanes has a few unique tournaments, such as its annual Best 5 of 7 handicap tournament, the Dave Dunn Memorial Tournament, and their classic Thanksgiving Doubles Tournament, which is always incredibly popular. That's another 7 drop by Eric Hallee Sr. Again with the 7 drops. It's been a common theme tonight, for Eric in this half at least. That's the 6-7-9, and he'll get the 6-7-9, believe it or not. He plays the wood, and the wood is just falling favorably for him. It's another spare for Eric Hallee Sr., adding insult to injury in the 9th. That's 120 plus a ball. And he's not done yet. He still has a fill to finish the 9th, and then he has the 10th box. So let's see if Eric Hallee Sr. can get to 130 or above. This is playoff bowling, folks. Eric Hallee Sr. on the head pin, and luck finally runs out for him. He punches full through the center spread eagle. That's a 3 fill. The 1, the 5, and the 9 pins are taken out. So that's 123 and 9. And for the 10 box, for the spare shot, he can't break the eagle quite as much as he had hoped. The 3, the 8, the 6, and the 10 pins are left on lane 8 for a 10 box for Eric Hallee Sr. to finish up the 4th game. And he's going to finish with leaving the 3 pin on the deck. That's a 9 box. That puts him at 132 to Steve Kelly's 80. That is an enormous point differential right there. In the game, that's just a 52-point difference. And that definitely flips the script on the total. Eric Hallee Sr. now up by 27 at the end of the 4th here. And we're going to now be moving on to the 5th and final game. This 5th and final game is going to mean quite a bit. It's going to effectively sort of reset things for a lot of what Steve Kelly accomplished in the first 3 games. And I told Eric Hallee Sr. this off camera earlier, but I said, the 5th game is basically a reset. You have a 27 handicap, and it's game on from here. Steve Kelly missing the spare on the smattering of pins dropped on the first ball. Second ball, he's left with the 1, the 8, and the 10. For an awkward 10-box opportunity, he starts out with an 8. 8 after 1 for Steve Kelly. 9 boxes to go in this 5th of 5 in this playoff match. From here on out, it's always 2 enter, 1 leaves, all the way up until the championship. Steve Kelly on lane 7 at Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire. He's on the head pin, the 1-2 pocket, dropping 6, right side check mark, 3, 5, 6, 10, for a spare shot. Instead of the left side inverted check mark that he was shooting at earlier, he's now got the right side check mark. Let's see if this goes. He fires. It looks good. He's on the 3-6 pocket, and oh my goodness, the 5 pin. Again, that 5 pin doesn't go. It looked like a great shot. It looked like it was going to be a spare shot, but it didn't move. 5 pin goes at the end, and a revenge 3rd ball for a 10 box. That's 18 after 2 for Kelly. And at this point, it's going to need to be do or die when it comes to marks from Kelly. Lane 7. Hitting that head pin is critical at this point. He's on the head pin, dropping 8, dropping 9. 10 pin is left on the deck. There's a piece of wood that is rather diagonal against the 10 pin. It's out a little bit by a few inches. Wood like that is concerning. You have to shoot at it, though. Kelly fires a little ahead of the red line, and it deflects the wood and deflects the ball. Some sort of cruel twist of fate. The 10 pin doesn't go for that spare. On the single, he takes it out for another 10 box. And another shot that could have been a spare in another reality ended up being another 10 box. Missed the second, get the third, but not necessarily by Kelly's accord or fault. So at the moment, Kelly sits at 28 after 3 with 2 boxes to go in the final first half of the 5th game. The final first half of this entire match. He drops 5, 1, 3, 6, 10, 8. 4 horsemen right side and the 8 pin, with the head pin being the orange pin. Kelly trying to run down the right side 4 horsemen, and he does, along with the 8 pin. That's a spare. Finally, the bill comes due for the cheap shots not going. This shot was not a cheap shot, and it finally went. That's a spare for Kelly in the first half. He sits at 38 plus a ball after 4. For the follow-up, for the fill, Kelly's on the head pin again. Sure to not miss the head pin for a lot of these shots. He drops 7 and fills with 7. That will put him at 45 after 4. Not going down without a fight. He's got 2, 6, 10 to shoot at. This is going to be a more difficult shot. You have to shoot at the 2 for this kind of shot to work. The wood may be favorable. He shoots at the 2, a little bit too full. The wood kind of claps together, doesn't affect the 6 or the 10's position. For an 8, 9, or 10 box, he'll clean up for a 10. Not missing much. He finishes at 55 after 5. About as much as he could have done with that one. And then as some extracurricular, Eric Hallee Jr., who was keeping score for me at the time, was telling me he was amazed that some of those shots didn't go. So just to add a little bit of context of what was going on. But hey, that's bowling for you. So Kelly holds on to the total by 1 at the half. Even 5 boxes ahead, it's only a very small margin. Or excuse me, by 28, not 1. Up in the game by 55, up in the total by 28. The total, of course, being the all-important deciding factor in these matches. Eric Hallee Sr., meanwhile, taking the spread eagle minus the 10 pin on the first ball. 2, 3, 4, 6, 7. And Eric Hallee chopping wood. Takes out the 4 and only the 4, left with the 2, 3, 6, 7. Shooting for a 10 box. Anywhere between a 6 and a 10 box is the possible outcome here. Hallee Sr. shoots. He takes 2 more out for the road, leaving the 2 and the 7 for an 8 box. 4 boxes to go before we finish all of our first halves of the match tonight. Eric Hallee Sr. thinking long and hard about this before he fires his next composition on lane 7 at Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire. He drops 6, 1, 3, 6, 7 on the deck. The 1-3 pocket is the object pocket to shoot at here. Eric Hallee Sr. has had very good luck with spares tonight. 11 spares on the night. Just 1 strike. He is the only strike between the 2 combatants tonight. 7, 8, 9, or 10. He misses the spare. 1, 3, 6. Hallee Sr. misses for a 7 box. 15 after 2. So, hey, by the way, I think this might be a good time to mention, if you are new to the world of Candlepin bowling content, just want to thank you for watching, and I hope this was a pleasant viewing experience for you the whole way down. If you enjoyed what you saw and want to see more, there's going to be plenty more bowling content coming your way. If you strike, comment, and subscribe to the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour page on Facebook, as well as Candlepin Bowling Network, Candlepin Corner, Alley Chat, and the Candlepin Bowling Channel, where all kinds of other videos, streams, and productions are regularly posted, in addition to results and statistics. And that's a spare by Eric Hallee Sr. That puts him at 25 plus a ball after 3. Ran down the washout for an excellent cleanup shot on the second ball. Eric Hallee Sr. filling a spare. He's on the head pin, dropping 9. Again, that 5 pin staying glued to the ground. That's been the only constant throughout both of our bowlers tonight. That 5 pin, very stubborn to go down. He fills that spare with 9, 34 after 3. And he runs down the 5 pin as well for a double spare. He's at 44 plus a ball after 4. He's now caught up effectively with Steve Kelly in the 4th. Not giving an inch, just trying to coast towards the end. The total is at an uneasy plus 16 for Hallee Sr. at the moment, and he still has 1 box to go. He's on the head pin 1-3 pocket, and that's a Lakeside shot for you. He takes out the right half and leaves left side hay bale. 2, 4, 5, 7, 8. That's a 5 fill for 49 after 4. Hallee versus the hay bale. He takes out a few more, leaves the 5 and the 8 pin. Hits it in the right spot, but the pins more just explode and fly around. So he's going to be shooting for an 8, 9, or 10 box. He misses both pins, and he'll take an 8 box. That'll put him at 57 after 5. Up in the game by 29, so he even gained 2 additional pins in that exchange. He started at plus 27, and now he's at plus 29. So now we have Steve Kelly for the final 5. And I remember JJ, who was in the audience in attendance during this match, he told me, you have to have a monster last half. So we'll see what Steve Kelly can do here. And let's see how it goes. So again, Steve Kelly down by 29 the total. But even though 29 seems like a low number, what you have to remember is you have to stay pace. You have to keep on pace with the bowler you're bowling against, and you also have to acquire 29 additional pins. That means you basically have to mark, and fill. Kelly on lane 8. Ball lightly sails towards the middle through the 1-3 pocket. Drop 7, 2-4-7 is what he's shooting at. There's a piece of wood slightly to the left of the 2, but it's out in front a little bit more than it should be in terms of a comfortable shot. Can try to play it, can try to miss it. It's going to be difficult. Kelly plays the wood, and again, that was exactly what I feared was going to happen. Takes out 2 of the 3 pins, but leaves the 2 pin itself. Kelly shoots for the 10. He gets a 10, pinning it out. Starting out the second half with a 10 for 65 after 6. At this point, Hallee Sr. holds on to the total by 19. But again, we're at an even point in the match, so it's more just minor details at this point that don't matter until both bowlers are all synced up. Steve Kelly on lane 8 fires again, this time not connecting with the head pin. Left side half Worcester, 2 and 8. 2 and 8 are knocked down, that is. It's going to be a half Worcester spare leave challenge for Steve Kelly. He's on the head pin this time. Pins are still falling. Steve wanting the piece of wood to push towards the last 2 pins remaining, the 5 and the 9, but no such luck. Kelly fires on the 5-9, misses the 5-9 for an 8 box. It was a valiant attempt on the half Worcester, but it just doesn't go. 73 after 7 for Steve Kelly at this point. So before we go, just want to thank a couple of folks, as always. We want to thank our ACST League Commissioner Danny Finn, Micah Imperato for the stats and numbers that I always pull from and use to put together all these talking points. Brian Hebert for statistical graphics used in this broadcast. The staff at Lakeside Lanes, Shane Lipke and Bobby Greco, especially in attendance tonight. And you. Always appreciate you watching. However, whenever you're watching, it's always greatly appreciated, and your interest in Candlepin Bowling and Candlepin Bowling Network, the ACST, and all of that. Hope you stay tuned for plenty of more matches in the future as well. Steve Kelly shooting for a 10 box. He'll take another 10. Doing an excellent job pinning things out. That's 83 and 8 for Steve Kelly at this point. At this point, it's looking a little bit grim. He's had plenty of mark opportunities, and a lot of these shots have been in the right places, but the pins are just not cooperating. And that's just the weird part. That's been a lot of the story for Lakeside Lanes in the past couple months. There's just been something about the pin action in this house that's gotten incredibly difficult. I know a couple of years ago, actually maybe even as far back as a few months ago, this house used to fall a lot easier, but now it's gotten a lot more difficult for whatever reason that may be. Kelly on the head pin, way too full on the head pin, and you can see the dejectedness in the arm gesture. That's a spread eagle. 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, and 10. No wood to help him. No wood is the theme of tonight for a lot of these leaves. He takes out the 4 pin and the 4 pin only, punching it right out. And at this point, it's going to be an ugly attempt for something close to a 10 box. It's going to be a 7 box in the 9th. At this point, it's not looking great. It's 90 and 9 for Steve Kelly with 1 to go. At this point, I don't think mathematically there's a whole lot that can be done to secure the match total for Steve Kelly at this point. He's up in the match by 6, even with a 4-box head start. That does not bode well. That means Eric Hallee Sr. can lock it up in just a few boxes when he stands up to bowl. Barring any extreme circumstances, Steve Kelly drops 6, 1, 2, 4, 10. For the spare, off to the left, leaving the 1, 2, 10 on the deck on lane 8 at Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire. Shooting for a 10 box for the final ball. It's going to be pin dancing around. Steve Kelly wanting that last pin to go just for posterity's sake, but this 2 pin refuses to give it to him. He's going to finish on a 9 box. At the end of his season, he finishes with a 99 for a grand total of 508. A hard-fought 508. Welcome to Lakeside Lanes. So Eric Hallee Sr., then, meanwhile, he has the floor now, and that puts him at plus 15 for the, or that puts him at a deficit of 15 for the total. And that's what he has to shoot for. Eric Hallee Sr., meanwhile, starting out right side half Worcester. He's 2 pins closer to victory. And he shoots on the half Worcester and he misses the head pin. He's left with the 1, the 8, the 6, and the 10. No spare, but a 10-box opportunity. All he needs is 16 pins. He'll take one more out for the road. That's a 7-box for Eric Hallee Sr. The total only within 8 pins now, within his grasp. And he has 4 boxes to do it. Eric Hallee Sr. at a 500 total at this point. Steve Kelly finishing with 508. Eric Hallee Sr. fires. He's off to the left of the head pin. The 1, the 5, the 3, the 8, the 9, and the 6 are left on the deck after 1 ball. No wood to help him. Again, I feel like I've said that 1,000 times tonight. And Eric Hallee fires again. Leaves the 1 and the 6. Just chopping wood, chopping wood, chopping wood. Not a lot of pin action tonight. A lot of the pin action is just shooting straight back with not a lot of sidewall action to speak of. Be finishing with a 9-box.
He needs 1 pin. It's going to be hard.
Eric Hallee Sr. on lane 8. He drops 7. And at that point, that is effectively it. The 3, the 5, and the 6 are what he's looking at for a spare. At this point, it's just gravy. And the 3, 5, 6, the 6 pin doesn't go on the triangle. Just looking to finish the string for the sake of finishing the string. Eric Hallee Sr. will miss it for a 9. That puts him at 82 after 8. Technically still under Steve Kelly's 83 after 8 at the same point in the game. 2 boxes to go. It is 2 boxes to go for Eric Hallee Sr., but he's up in the total by 10. So congratulations to Eric Hallee Sr. He will be advancing to the next round of the playoffs in the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour. Who his next opponent is, I am not entirely sure. There are still a couple more matches to be bowled, at least as at the time of this recording. By the time you are watching this, you may already know. Eric Hallee Sr. dropping 8 versus the 1-3. He misses the 1-3, misses the spare. The head pin is the orange pin. So if he had gotten the spare and he played the orange pin pool, that would have been an orange pool raffle ticket entry. He'll clean up for a 10-box. 1 box to go now. He's at 92 after 9. And again, we're just in what they call in the NFL garbage time at this point. Eric Hallee Sr. just getting some bonus pins racked up for whatever statistical analysis will be looked at in the future here. 1 box to go for Eric Hallee Sr., the victor of tonight's match. Eric Hallee Sr. fires and releases. He is off the left of the head pin. 1, 3, 6, 9, 4, 7 are on the deck. For the spare, he misses the 1-3 pocket actually. Pins are still rolling around. The 1 and the 9 are what he's left with. No spare, so it's going to be 8, 9, or 10 with a possible 102 game for Eric Hallee Sr. to finish off. It will be 101 with that 9. And that will be it. 101 for Eric Hallee Sr. 5-game total of 537 versus Steve Kelly's 508. So again, Eric Hallee Sr. will be advancing to the next round of the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour Class B North Playoffs. So major congratulations to Eric Hallee Sr. So that will be about it from us today at Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire. Again, Eric Hallee Sr. victorious over Steve Kelly 537 to 508 in the grand total. So if you enjoyed this match and want to see more again, check out Candlepin Bowling Network on YouTube and Facebook and the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour on Facebook for plenty of matches. Right now, where there are a lot of playoff matches going on in all of the different classes from A all the way down to D. So check out the playoff picture. You'll see that Eric Hallee Sr. will advance. We also have JJ Trigny versus Rob Brown, Kevin Dietrich versus Dominic Palladino, and John Alosa versus Joe Rushlow. I will be covering John Alosa versus Joe Rushlow on Sunday morning, May 26th at roughly 11 a.m. So check out, again, Candlepin Bowling Network on YouTube and Candlepin Corner if you want to check out the Candlepin Skins show that is actively airing. Be sure to strike, comment, subscribe, and go to candlepin.org and click Go Bowling to find your nearest center. I've been Steve Kelly, and for Steve Kelly and Eric Hallee Sr., have a great one, everyone.